This is a Karambit knife. It's a knife shaped like an eagle's claw. It also has this cool loop that you can do tricks with. And this is a video game called Valorant. You may have heard of it. In Valorant, there is a knife called the Prime Karambit. It's a knife that can be both open and closed. But what makes it unique is the way it opens. This is how a normal folding knife opens, and this is how it opens in the video game. I think that knife is awesome, and I want to try and make one. But I had a few questions. One, how do I make this? And two, where do I start? So to start with, I did the first thing I thought of, which is go online and find a stencil. It was very hard to find a stencil, as not many of them are very good. Eventually I found this one, which is actually a 3D model, cut out all the pieces and traced it onto this piece of metal. It's galvanized steel and it will do the job. Luckily I found a piece that wasn't too thick and it was wide enough. Once the tracing was done, I went and grabbed my grinder, attached a cutting disc and went at the metal. First we're just removing each piece individually. And here are all the pieces we're going to use. From here you can somewhat see how the knife's going to work and the way it opens, but we still have to remove all of the excess metal, so we're going to do that. To do that, I'm going to once again use the cutting disc to remove as much as I can before switching to a sanding disc and sand the rest away. Using a sanding disc just makes it more refined and gets finer detail. Now this knife is full of random shapes and it was actually kind of difficult, but because they're all small, it didn't take too long. Oh, also side note, look how cool the sparks are. Now since all of the pieces are a more refined shape, you can really see how the knife's coming together. But we have a few issues. Before getting into those issues though, let's talk about the arms. The arms are the part I was most scared of, because if I mess these up, I'm just going to have to restart. But they turned out really well. Now let's get on to the issues. Issue number one are these pieces. These pieces are on the real knife, but they don't really serve a purpose. They more are just a part of the handle and make the knife look cooler. Now because my crafting abilities aren't the best, I'll be getting rid of them and replacing them with two more arms, just to make it more stable and secure. Secondly, the handle itself, I'm actually going to make a second piece to sandwich the blade, so then it can actually be held properly. Because I planned this perfectly, we have just enough metal left over to cut out both another piece of the handle and two more arms. But before moving on to the next bit of the build, I did just want to quickly file it down, getting rid of all sharp edges, as these are quite sharp and I don't want to cut myself while I'm fiddling around with moving bits. Now it's time to drill holes, and this is really scary because the holes have to be in the perfect spot, otherwise once again I'm going to ruin the build. To find the right size shape hole, I went and got this bolt, got out my drill set, and roughly found the right size. Once I selected the piece, I went and got my drill press, set it up on the table, and drilled into that wood just to double check. Once I double checked and it fit, it was time to drill into the metal. Took it very slowly, drilling each piece one at a time, and I kept on double checking. After drilling holes into the handle and the arms, you could somewhat see how the knife's come together. Obviously there's a massive piece missing, being the blade, but it still works. Now since they're in place, we can actually line up where the holes on the blade are going to go. So we did that, quickly cut them out, and you can see it coming together. Now it's time to move on to the other side. I'm not gonna lie, I completely eyeballed where the holes are meant to go. So, I really did not take this seriously, and I didn't realize how much I could have messed this build up. Anyway, it worked out, so I'm happy. But now we've got to do the other half of the handle. Now, I may have done something stupid. When I went to pick up my second bit of the handle, I noticed something was off. I'd cut it wrong. I just straight up rushed it and it looked horrible. Here's a comparison, they look horrible. So I'm going to have to recut the handle. Luckily, because I planned it, there is just enough metal. And we can cut the last piece we need. Quickly cutting it out, quickly drilling the holes, and this is how the knife looks. Now here's the knife together. Obviously it's not done because we still need to cut the bolts. But it blew my mind that the knife worked. It actually really made my day. But I noticed an issue, the center wasn't working. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to fill the middle of the handle, and that's where this old piece, the scrap piece, comes into use. It's going to act as something to fill the gap in between the loops. Speaking of loops, that's what we need to cut next. We need to cut the thumb holes. If you don't know what I'm talking about, well, this is my Karambit. And, well, this hole is what I'm talking about. You put your finger in the hole, and you can spin the blade. And we need to add that to the Prime Karambit knife, because, well, every Karambit knife has a little hole. It's kind of what makes it a Karambit knife, along with the shape. To add the thumb holes, we had to do something I've never done before. You see, we're going to be using this new drill piece. Now, I've never used this new drill piece, but I did learn I need to drill a pilot hole. A pilot hole is pretty much just a hole to guide the drill to make sure you drill in the correct spot. To make sure the pilot hole was in the same place on each piece, I bolted them together before drilling it. Once the pilot hole was done, it was time to use the new drill piece. Now, this new drill piece kind of scared me. It sounded like a jet engine and it kind of had me on edge, and then, well, this happened. This is exactly why you have to be careful and always paying attention while making something. Don't worry, I didn't get hurt, and no other issues really came up while I was using it. Once it was done, they looked like this. They kind of looked like bottle openers, but they'll do the trick. In fact, they actually worked really well. It was now time to modify the middle piece. If we don't modify it, then the blade won't actually move. It will kind of just be stuck in place. So we're going to have to cut off the end, and a little bit of the top. But as I went to set up the grinder to cut the metal, I noticed there was a problem. My drill piece was stuck in the drill. I'd lost the little thing to loosen the drill. I'm not sure what it's called. I think it's called a drill chuck. Anyway, luckily I went and found this adjustable spanner and got the piece out. I was kind of worried there. Also accidentally filmed it the wrong way, but oh well. I also realized I needed to sand the thumb hole before cutting the piece, just because it's easier to hold. So I quickly sanded that down, and now it's time to modify the middle piece. I cut the excess metal off the middle piece and then sanded it down with a file, making it nice and smooth, and it was time to put the knife back together. I wanted to put the knife together for a few reasons. 1, I wanted to see how it all looked. 2, I wanted to see if it worked. And 3, I needed to see what I still needed to do to finish the knife. I also got this pretty cool video of the knife working, but the build is not over. I quickly took it apart again and sanded the handle. I wanted to sand it down so then it was nice and smooth and fit in the hand nicer. I also cut the bolts off and sanded it down so they weren't sharp. The build was almost done. There were just 2 things I still needed to do. 1 is sharpen the blade. This is going to be a little tricky because of the shape of the blade, but I'll figure it out. And 2 is paint it. For painting, there are 3 colors we're going to use: black, white, and gold. For sharpening, I clamped it down to the table, grabbed out my sander, and sanded away as much as I could, before then moving on to a file and filing down the fine edges, making it super sharp. As for painting, I started off with white. The arms are the only parts that are going to be white, and the rest are going to be black and gold. Once they had dried, I went and got the gold pieces, put them down and gave them a spray. Now the blade itself needs to have a second coat on the back, and I have no idea why I also put a second coat on the middle piece. You won't even see this piece, so I don't know why I did it. And then I realized an issue. You see, the handle needs to be black and gold. I should have done the black first, but I accidentally did the gold first. But that's no issue, I just put tape over all of the gold and sprayed it down with black. After that dried and I peeled off the tape, I realized it actually was an issue because the tape peeled up some of the gold. That's no problem, I'll just respray it later. Once all the paint had dried, it was time to put the knife together. It didn't take too long to put together, and it was finally done. And here is the Prime Karambit. Comparing it to the one in the video game, it doesn't look perfect, but it looks pretty good in my opinion. Obviously I've changed it a little bit considering I added 2 extra arms, but I still think it looks pretty good. Now comparing it to other real life ones, I think mine's turned out pretty good. I wish I'd chose a bit more shiny paint, but oh well. Now comparing it to my Karambit knife, it also turned out pretty well. Obviously it's not meant to look like a normal Karambit knife, but if you looked at it you can clearly tell it's meant to resemble one. But the real question on everyone's mind is, how does it function? Well, here's a few videos. There was still just one question on my mind, and that is, if any pressure gets applied to the blade, will it close? And surprisingly no, I don't know how it works, but it stays locked out when any pressure is applied to it. Could someone please explain that? I don't know how it works. Building the Prime Karambit knife was definitely a challenge. It was a fun challenge, and I learned something new. I learned 1, I can make a knife, and 2, I can make something with moving bits. Anyway, if you enjoyed this kind of video, I've got plenty more just like it. So subscribe to find out what's coming next. Also, thanks for watching.